Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Onyx Path Twitch, where we are here for the Making of Curseborne panel. I am joined by the amazing Rich Thomas, the mirthful Mike Chaney, the I don't have a
I
D
think I
word,
was dynamic for a
dynamic
while on
Dixie
the
Cochran,
blog.
Dexterous.
dexterous. That
Actress.
also could work. And I am the terrific, I believe, Travis.
Disastrous.
Right.
Disappointing.
So yeah, we are here to talk about the making of Curseborne. Rich, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Travis.
Mm.
Okay. So Curseborne is a project that we have been working on for really quite a while. Um, a lot of it came out of the creative need to do not just more things than were possible with the previous horror properties that we worked on, but more up to date, if you will, things. It's when you're working with horror, we've got this centuries long genre that we are delving into. But a lot of people's have like it's almost like a long thing that all just balloons out to what horror's been made in the last even just the last decade, and that's very different than what Bela Lugosi did back in the day with Dracula. So we in the 90s when we did the original World of Darkness and we did Chronicles of Darkness, that was evolving, but there's a time period there where media exploded. What was media exploded and what was horror media also exploded, and that was the kind of thing that we were saying, like, how do we work this in there? And we were doing a bunch of experiments with that with the previous horror properties. It just seemed like we would have some room to really do this. Um, we needed a new space, a new kind of a horror game, and so that's when we started having conversations, just really bopping the stuff around at conventions, just thinking, what if we did this? What if we did
Hmm.
that? And I think several years ago, we said, it's about let's start getting serious about this. Let's sit down and really kind of figure out the precepts of what is this setting and what kind of a world it is that we want people to be playing this, and what do we want people to be playing in this setting. Um, and our first discussions were very much, as you might imagine, well, from that creative impulse of if we did this from these roots of like even so much as to say we want to start a monster game and then have its companion monster game and then it's a companion monster game and then another that sort of thing, which is very familiar for our previous creators and for our horror audience.
Hmm.
But at somewhere in those meetings, multiple people started playing up the idea of what would be very much a new way of looking at how you play is to not have these things run parallel to each other, but to have them all together from the beginning, which is a huge undertaking, and one we batted around the issues of how do we even do that, because we're very used to saying concentrate on this one type of supernatural being you can play, and then the next time we do it we'll concentrate on another one, and then we'll make sure that they can play together for some of them, and for the original ones we didn't even make sure for that. So starting the whole thing off and saying this has to be a coherent world, a coherent world where um, monsters can of creatures of the night, if you will, can exist, um, and realize that they're not the only ones, that there's a you know a biome, if you will, of supernatural creatures that exist, and there's the ones that you can kind of run into and maybe either hate or love or whatever, but then there's the ones that are even around that is even more dangerous and horrific,
Hmm.
I need to deal with. So
Yeah, if I can bunch in for a second, just because someone just in the chat said that they blamed me for this, and I also kind of blame me for this because I had just come off pitching and starting Exalted Essence when
Hmm.
we were really starting to drill down into Curseborne, and I was thinking a lot about like I had just joined Onyx Path, I had just taken over Exalted at the time, and I was noticing how people are having to wait for their favorite splats, and I was even noticing that when I was doing Chronicles of Darkness, pardon me.
But when
Going
is second edition of this going to come out? Yeah.
right, exactly. So yeah, I really wanted to be like all of them from the beginning.
Yep. And like I say, I think there was some real support for that. Um, and like we always do, we bopped it around. We continued to play around with it until it seemed like it was a doable thing. And that took a fair amount of time. But you know, with that, like I say, that sets the tone for like what kind of world is this? So yeah, we started to then reach out to various writers for how they would think of this particular grouping. And I guess we could call them Curseborn is officially their lineages. Um, we had a pretty good idea for how to divide those things up. There was a lot of fine tuning that also goes on in these things, but that was a whole long process. Again, everything about leading up to Curseborn, like till this time last year, or I guess the year before that, Travis? When did we start the vids?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I think the videos started. I'd have to double check, but I want to say it was probably shortly after Onyx Path, kind of the year prior to the announcement of Curseborn. So like a little after 2 years, a little less than 2 years ago was
Right.
when we started working on that.
So
Yeah.
we knew enough about Curseborn for what we wanted it to feel like at that point. The kind of moods we wanted to establish, and kind of got into the idea that let's start this. Let's give this a really long, slow burn to whatever end point we get to, which always was, one of our main milestones is always going to be a crowdfunding campaign. In this case, a Kickstarter campaign. And so we wanted to get people to that, wanting to know more about it, and that's all that really is about. And because it's really hard to get information out to people um, in the way that we're uh, dispersed over so much social media. There's not just one place where we can go, hey, we're doing this thing and you really like it. Um, so that was when we said, we need something that can reach out to all these things and let people just start to be aware that this is coming and this is happening, and tease into uh, the project that would eventually be kickstarted, because we had that much done for it. So we can't kickstart it unless we have a really good idea for what the final text, the final thing is going to be. We don't want to put up art that's going to be non-representational of what we're going to be doing. It's got to feel right, even if it doesn't show up in the part of the book you might expect it to show up in, because that's all part of the magic of layout. So um, yeah, so I think Travis, you and I got together um probably like just a couple days or a week before Danielle said, "Hey, we should do some short videos," and and you were like, yeah, on that." Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very interesting process to get started because, um, as you will discover throughout this panel and throughout the ultimate making of Curseborn book that will be going out to the deluxe backers, I believe, correct? Um,
and everybody who eventually.
well, yeah, yeah, and then out for public consumption. But I hadn't the foggiest idea what was going on with Curseborn. I was unaware of its existence until Rich was like, "Hey, you want to make some videos?" And I was
Right.
sure.
We did not. We had the most ironclad secrecy stuff going on with the thing. In fact, for the very longest time, we called it it was
UMG.
UMG,
Yeah.
Untitled
UMG.
Monster Game.
UMG was how we would refer to it.
And literally, all I had seen that, you know, because I had been in the Monday meeting already for some time by that point. So I had seen like mentions of that, like as we broke down like where things were at in the pipeline and stuff, you know, behind the scenes. But I had literally no idea what was going on. And then Rich reached out to me and was basically like, "Hey, we'd like to do some, you know, short videos." And it was a really cool process working through that because trying to figure out like how to
Well,
generate.
I think we started with the scream on the subway
Yes.
because
Yeah.
for some reason that had stuck in my head. I think I had seen either I'd either be down. I might have actually been down in one of Philadelphia's underground train areas when something came in. But I rode the subway a lot when I was younger. And if you watch anything with stuff going on, I mean, Daredevil, I think has a bunch of scenes with trains.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and so it always struck me that there's it's the train coming in, but it does sound like somebody screaming.
Mm.
And so just kind of threw that out to Travis. Said, can you do anything with this? As a sort of a teaser for this horror thing we're coming up with. And he did that, and that we went through a few iterations, but I don't remember being a lot.
No, I think we hit on it pretty quickly because I remember, and I might even be misremembering a little bit, but I thought we had talked about kind of like a almost like a '70s horror kind of vibe to it, and we found that the footage from the train that was really the thing that sort of tie it
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
together, and it worked out really well.
And then you said, I think I could do this. I could do something like this, and something this. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, well, here's this that I've thought of. And threw those together, then went to the group and said, you guys have any ideas? And so we got some more ideas.
Yeah.
And then you just produced the hell out of
Yeah, and
them.
it was a lot of there was a lot of definitely like pursuing vibes and trying to figure
Yeah.
out kind of basically because
Yeah,
again like
it's all about the mood. Yeah.
right like even during the process of making those videos like uh I certainly don't want to give the impression that I was stumbling around the darkness because Rich, you were very good at communicating what it was you wanted and what the feel was. That said, I wasn't like going through text and being like, "Oh, we're gonna pull this part," you
Right.
know. I wasn't like, you know. I think Mike and I, maybe you and I might have had a couple of like vibe conversations during the video stuff, but I think that was mainly in the context of like as the whole team was looking at it, right? I don't remember if you and I spoke about it separately before that, but
No, it's pretty much like that, like the vibe thing, because they got pointed a couple of videos, like those when record companies have no money to make videos for the certain bands, so they do these lyric videos with stock footage.
right,
Hmm.
yeah.
And pointed to a bunch of those that look kind of cool.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting challenge creatively because, and in hindsight, I'm very glad that I wasn't also trying to think about like the
Right.
game text at the time. You
And
know what I mean?
is this about the primals? Because I could do,
Right.
that's not what we wanted because that's not the information. We didn't want to give that information at that point.
Yeah, I also think like, and pardon my absence a minute ago, I've been sick. Like I said in the last panel, I had to go take some medicine. Because suddenly I was coughing a bunch. Anyway, um, even though this was really, really collaborative, which I loved, probably the most collaborative book I've ever worked on, honestly. Um, I also got to be for the first like couple of years we were working on it, kind of the like vibes mistress in the background, and that I was curating like playlists and Pinterest boards and just like stuff people could glance at to kind of get a feel for it when they were working on it. And that was really, really fun because I got to work really closely with Rich in like an art capacity, which is not a thing I usually do, and with Mike. Um, because usually I have no say on that stuff, and that's fine. That's not my job. But it was really, really cool working with everybody on this, partially because I was a bit more caught up on what horror is doing like right this second with like Gen Z and stuff like that because I keep up with the state of horror. I know Travis is too, I do believe. Um, but like it's also just yes, I'm gonna say yes, I'm 40, but I also am one of the youngest people on the team, so it was nice having someone who's also very online. I'm still into fashion. I'm still into, you know, all that stuff. So I try to keep my finger on the pulse a little bit, even though I probably look like a, you know, 40-year-old trying to keep the finger on the pulse because at some point we all turn into that. But
Well, that would
like,
be accurate then.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
fair.
But like it was really, really cool to work in that capacity because like I got to go search out artists to send to Mike at one point.
Mhm.
We had a whole bunch of working around the logo when that discussion came around. Various, you know, art pieces, book covers. We're still looking at sketches and stuff, obviously, since the book's still in production. And it's been really, really fun to have that much on that side of things and not just on the like, here's where we should capitalize, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things we wanted to do with Curseborne, and I know keeping the tone such that it's not a massively intimidating thing to get into. If you've got all these choices, but we're trying to reduce the choice paralysis by being very specific about what kind of characters these are, but also writing them in a way that are that keep them very accessible
Yeah.
for anyone coming into this, whether you're an old World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness or any of our other games fan, or you're coming to us new because you love the genre. And that could be somebody who's, you know, in their 60s. It could be somebody who's, you know, in their teens, coming to this an Onyx Path new because we're offering this kind of horror thing. So we had it's a balancing act. It's a constant tonal shifty thing that we're playing around with. We did it while we were writing it. We did it. We did it while we were getting the Kickstarter ready. We did it during development after the Kickstarter, and we still keep futzing with it. And we're about to, you know, sit down and start playing around with all kinds of formats for what the book is going to look like overall, not just the touches that everybody has seen from the Kickstarter, from the Ashcan, and stuff like that. So it's an ongoing thing. Back then, people were writing furiously, editing furiously, going back into it furiously. The SBU system was being played around with in a bunch of different venues. We knew we had to get it right before we applied to Curseborne because this was our return, you know, like I say, to the horror genre with our own thing, and it was very, very important to make that work right. And so there was an enormous amount of work that went on with that. Uh, a lot of writers went into it. We tried to list everybody who was involved. I hope we didn't miss anybody. We definitely are not going to say who did what where, because it is a crazy quilt of ideas that were sewn together and then smoothed out and then looked at and then pieces were, you know, well, no, this doesn't
Yeah.
work. We're pulling that off. Let's use that for later. At what point the power level was capped was so that we could say, this is not a scary thing to get into. This is a very accessible thing. And the next levels of power, which are what I would say would be more what people who are used to us for horror would be looking at. Keep that down there and come back to it when we're ready for it. So that's going on. We're getting other ideas for how are we going to talk about this thing. Travis is doing variants on these. Now we get the logo. We fit the logo into the teasers and we throw them up. We want to put in another way to get interested and for people to start going, what is going on here? We know what the families are. We know what the families and the lineages are. So now it's time to do a fun thing with that. We didn't want to do a full out ARG experience, which is where you're completely immersed in it, because we really didn't have the time, the bandwidth to make that thing a full thing for, like, you know,
Yeah, we're
what,
also not
you know,
ARG designers. Like that is a specific kind of
all right.
design. Um,
Eddie and I have touched on them, but I mean, you know, we really have not gone all the way with the
yeah.
big, you know, budget ones. So instead, we started putting in some mysterious messages around, and the the idea of using the moth as a symbol that represented the game was I think Dixie and Danielle and
I
Wow.
like made a pitch deck for it that
Right.
I I still have all those on my iPad, so I think we're doing the making of book. We'll probably uh
Yep.
look at putting some of those in there because like I had a list of reasons, but you can also tell that I'm writing them at like 1 in the morning on my iPad. So it looks a little
A
like,
little
Charlie
straggly.
with the red string, like
Yep.
being like, no, 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 it makes sense. Here's why it makes sense. Because like I got excited about it and then yeah, wrote a dissertation on it. Um, which was really funny because pretty much as soon as I pitched it, Rich was like, "Yeah, that makes sense," and I was like, "Oh, I don't have to convince you." Okay,
Right.
thank you. You
I had been playing
got
around
it.
the idea for a long time about a world where uh, bad luck is not just a casual thing. It's actually how things are in the world, and the results of everything going on with COVID and things in the U.S. Uh, and elsewhere. When you wonder to yourself, how does that very bad person keep doing so much and becoming richer and richer and more powerful and more powerful? Uh, and why do good people suffer? You know, and sort of playing around with that from the macro to the minor. Why is it that every time you go to get a bus, it's late or it's early, like when you're really in a hurry, but when you just can't, it just never quite works out until it does, and you have a great day. So, what if that was how the world was functioning, how that world? So we came up with the idea of the web of curses, which worked with the imagery we were doing with the moth, bing. These things they come together and make sense as we're communicating it. So, um, then we thought, what we want to do is to start letting people know what they could play, but not in a way that's pinning us down because we're still working on it and we're getting it ready for eventually the crowdfunders. So at that point, Dixie, you with the survey,
Oh yeah, with the quiz.
the quiz on the website.
Yeah, I pitched the idea of doing like a "What family are you?" kind of quiz because I thought it'd be a fun way to introduce people to the families. Um, because we hadn't quite like put them all out there yet. Worked with Matthew, Andy, and I think Eddie to make all the questions for it. They were incorrectly weighted at first. I realized a bunch of people got the same answers for a minute there. I fixed it very quickly because I was learning how to make that as it went. So that it has so many branches. Um, the cool thing about that though, like I get notifications whenever someone takes it, and people are still taking that thing every single day. We haven't done an updated version for the kind of like there's some names that are different now, things like that. People can tell what they are. Uh, maybe we will, but like it's one of those things where I'm amazed that people are still finding it, and I'm assuming posting it in like discords or group chats or
Yeah,
whatever, and people are taking it. Like I get a notification for Typeform like every single day, usually 4 to 10 times a day. Had a lot of fun making that. If anybody wonders about the art, all the images are from Unsplash, so they're all royalty free, like able to be used on that
mhm,
kind of thing. Um, and yeah, we were just really trying to find new ways to present things to people because, like, you know, there's a tried and true method for kickstarting something like third edition alchemicals, where it's like we know you liked the first two editions. We're making it up to third edition. You know what's going to be in it. We don't have to like
right.
do all this. But for Curseborne, we all worked really hard on it, and we wanted, like, we felt it was really really special. Um, and B, like, it was just kind of fun to play with how he presented it at first. Having
Right.
the videos that just dropped, having the glitchy things happen in various
Yeah.
places, having Danielle as Curse
Curse boy.
Boy on the Discord.
Yep.
Also, if you sent any emails to any strange addresses during that, that was also Danielle. She was having a like Danielle. I think she'd be the first to say that she's a bit of a troll. Like she enjoys it. Like not in a derogatory way at all. She just likes fuck with people a little bit in
Yep.
like a
Yep.
fun,
She was
friendly way.
definitely, as far as I could tell, enjoying the process of
Yeah,
putting stuff out there that people went, "What?"
yeah. And then we built the initial weird website that didn't look like a company website where you could there were animated moths that I
Mhm.
I sent the worst ever paint.jpg to Travis to
It
show
was
him what I
it was a
wanted.
beautiful thing. It really was.
It was just a black background with a bunch of random sized stars, and it said "Stars are moths." And I was like, "Can you please make me this but animate it?" Because I don't know how to animate.
We call that a sketch.
Yeah, but I definitely made it in Paint.
Yeah.
Not even the like enhanced version of Paint, just regular MS Paint. And then yeah, like putting that together was also really cool because we got to use some of Travis's videos. I got to use just some random like I put some random things in there that you could click on and find back pages and stuff, and maybe there's a new one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what we're really trying to communicate with all of this stuff is mood, tone,
Yeah.
and there's things you're going to see here that if you're into horror gaming are going to be familiar, and there's things that are going to be like, what was that about?
Yep.
So that was kind of the whole point of doing it in this way, is to kind of get people's attention, get them interested in, and get them questioning expectations
Yeah.
before we even got to showing them what we were really working on.
Yeah, there were a couple of folks who were definitely like, I don't know how I feel about this. And they were like, well, we wanted to subvert you a little bit here because we haven't done this project before. This is a big deal
Right.
for us. We care so much about it. We put so much of ourselves into it. We work, we worked really hard to make it great. So,
Now, meanwhile, while this is going on and we're tightening up the text, so we're getting more aware of that, we can use that when it's ready for the things that we're coming up with. So, like I said, once we knew that we were going to do these families, it's capable of doing the quiz on the website. We're also looking at art. We did Dixie did mood boards, and mood boards. We did lists and lists. We had a couple channels that were just filled with images, and artists we thought were hitting what we were going for, or imagery that we thought we were going for. And again, like there are people that I've worked at, freelance artists that I've worked with for decades, like literally decades, and I love their work. I love what they do. We didn't want to say, it looks like X. So we needed to get artists who could expand what you expected when you saw us presenting you with horror material, horror visuals. And that was, it's tough. It's tough because, you're like, oh, maybe it's perfect. But let's save them for later, for at least the initial part of this, to get people to understand that, yeah, what you're seeing is new. It's not a variant on this other thing that we've done before. And so Dixie was a big part of bringing those people up, but pretty much everybody found artists that they thought might be appropriate and added it to the mix that Mike was keeping an eye on and eventually starting to hire from. And Mike, do you want to share a little bit of that?
I think we had a list of 15 artists, and one responded.
Yeah.
But
that happens sometimes.
yeah, well, it's a lot of them are basically Magic the Gathering artists and stuff like that, and they get a ton of spam emails from from fans and people like that. So you're gonna get lost in the mix. It's just how it is. But yeah, we got some really good ones. We got one of the head art guys from Weta, who did the Vampire Chapel or the Hungry Chapel thing.
We use it in a lot of our advertising.
From the original What is Curseborne teaser, I think.
And it's taken us on the curse this year's convention T-shirt.
It is. I'm gonna go fish up that link right quick. Continue.
And he has an entire crew of guys that he works with. So we got a bunch of them. So we basically refer to them as a New Zealand crew. It's like him. Was it Rodri? I think, yeah, a bunch of those guys all work for me. Like I said, Rodri did the morgue lady ghost thing,
right?
And it's most of those guys. You've probably seen some of their stuff in a couple of books here and there, but not a lot, because availability is not really a great. They don't have a lot of availability with their day jobs and stuff like that, so we can get them when we can. Yep. And this time we actually got them at a really good time because they're doing a bunch of the stuff.
Yeah, and bringing in new artists, people who again, a lot of new artists we reached out to, just didn't connect, didn't happen. But we did give some folks some tryouts, and most of them did well. We did have a few people we went, yeah, no, you're not getting what we're trying to get at, and that's kind of the process. We weren't just hiring for a book; we're hiring for the new game line. And
Yep.
so we had to bear that in mind as we looked at these things. It was all about, are you presenting what we're trying to present the way that we need this to be? And that can be harder to do than production because this is all preliminary stuff, and sometimes stuff just gets put aside. Doesn't mean we wouldn't go back to some of the artists and say, hey, now we're ready. But
Okay.
but at that time, no, this we won't use that one. So yeah,
Wanted a fresh take on everything.
yeah, absolutely. And then also we're looking at now as we're scoping out, we want to do October, we want an October Kickstarter. Okay, now we're planning backwards from that. How do we get there? And part of that was also knowing that there are various conventions and things where a little bit of publicity in hand would be really, really helpful. And
Mhm.
so that's when we started talking about an ash can. Let's present something ahead of time that is very slice of, and it does, in fact, I think we just mentioned in the previous thing where the ashcan did not include the sorcerers
At
because
first, yeah.
because that was still that getting that magic system functioning correctly was still something that we were playing around with. So we said, okay, so this is just we're not just gonna not include those because A, it would probably bulk out the ashcan more than it should, and B, this is enough to give people the feeling for what we're going for. Magic is usually the thing that's always, that's the hack, right? That's when people makes things more complicated. So yeah, so that was it. So what do we want the ashcan to look like? And at this point, we're also doing the brochure, which was a publicity brochure.
Oh, yeah.
Very short, very quick. Mostly, I think we were aiming that for the brochure. We were trying to get that for Origins or Gamma, one or the other. But we were aiming that for the retailers while we were doing the ashcan for people for the players. So playing around with those two things. What do we want in those two things? And getting new artists. Like that was where I think we had. I don't know. We did about 142 versions of that brochure.
Fun fact about the brochure, by the way, last week was the 1 year anniversary of the release of that brochure.
Yeah, that
Nice.
makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, for the whatever convention that was, and that was a process. It was an ordeal because we were really like, if this is the first thing that people are going to see, that's going to be in the hands, especially of retailers who are, they see a lot of games.
Yeah.
We want something that's going to stand out and really be, fresh and new. So that was a big deal. I know I almost felt Mike reaching through the screen to throttle me a couple times when it was just like, no, I meant let's get this here. Get rid of all that text. Things like that. But that is what you have to do with these things.
We
And
did have
then
to count a lot of text on that thing too.
we did. It was kept feeling like if we really wanted to get people's attention, we had to say just the right thing in just the least amount of words to just pop it into their head. And then when the ashcan, the ashcan was being written at the same time, we get and it's like, look, what do we do with how this thing looks? And Dixie was like, I think I know what it should look like.
One of the scariest emails I've ever gotten though was from Rich going like, "Do you just want to lay out the ashcan?" And I was like, I had done like 3 layout things at that point, and I was like, maybe. I did get to make it like so. One of the most fun parts of that for me was that Rich had this idea that the background, the like edge textures, should be something with the webs, but like erase, like something's trying to like break through, and there's all this stuff. And I sat down for about an hour and a half one night while watching TV with my iPad and just took the initial webbing art and just destroyed it with my like eraser settings and various other like weird grungy settings and had a really good time with it. And it was just one of those things that like making a bespoke hand done texture for that was really fun. But no, it was scary. Like when you asked me to do that, because like this was our first time we were presenting this project we've been working on at this point for 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
And it was scary, but also really meant a lot that you like trusted me to at least attempt it. Because I knew that if it wasn't what you wanted, you would, fix it.
Oh yeah, but the
Obviously.
great thing about ash cans is that they're not supposed to be polished.
Right.
They're not supposed. If you get an ash can, you think that's what this thing's going to look exactly like. That's not an ash can. That's a brochure.
Yeah,
Right?
there's,
Like, this
there's
is-
no art in it. It's black and white.
Yep.
I got to pick the fonts, which was fun. I picked really grungy fonts because I was trying
Mhm.
to go for that urban horror thing. But yeah, like it was a lot of fun to make, but it was definitely it's one of those like scary but excited emails that you get when you're like, oh, they're gonna let me try this. This is really cool. And I honestly, what y'all got is pretty much what I did. I think it's the 6th or 7th iteration, but a lot of them were just me tweaking little things here and there, moving
Right.
sidebars around, that kind of shit,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like it was not like here it's done. Oh, that's great, Dixie. Bye.
Perfect. Send it off. Yeah.
No, that's for good or for ill. That is not our process.
Yeah, you will be
yeah.
seeing some iterations of a few things in the making of book. I think Travis and I have talked about putting some sketches in there.
Right.
Some of the symbols work. I know Rich has before shown his work on like Scion symbols and how he puts those together. And even though these are not nearly as complex, there have been a few iterations on some of the various like
all
lineage family symbols. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you probably get a little peek behind that in the making of book Travis and I are working on. So we want to make sure that we're not just like telling you a story, but like showing you some of the process. So you're probably gonna see some emails, might be redacted, who knows? You're probably gonna see some sketches and things off of my iPad and whatever Rich uses to draw. I think Rich still draws in physical mostly.
Depends. Yeah.
Okay.
But for doing the base ideas for symbols, yeah, I'll still draw them up. A lot of times in ballpoint on copier paper, just to get the feel, to get the thing, and then scan it in into Photoshop and start really fine tuning it and cleaning it up and stuff like that to make it valid. But yeah, and then I think we were pretty much everything started to come together. We went back and forth on the symbols for the primal because that was something that you're just nailing.
So I got a few more to finish, but I'm working on
A
them.
few more, and same thing with me with the rest of the families for the rest of the lineages. But we got enough so we could go ahead and present that entire series of ads, basically, that we put up with dealing with the various families and things like that. So that was all rolling along, and I don't know. I just got it in my head that I wanted one more thing. Like I wanted one more thing. I think it was because of PAX, and I wanted something just for PAX Unplugged because it is such a great place, and we had arranged to be doing Curseborne demos there. So this is after the Kickstarter. So like, whoa, they're even thinking past that. I know it's hard to believe, but we do, and so. Looked at a whole bunch of artists for the style that we were looking at, which was to really be different for it, and wound up looking at our one of our old friend Priscilla Kim's set of imagery, and one of the styles she was working on was just that's the thing, that's the one. Can Priscilla do it? And Priscilla could not get them done for the Kickstarter, but we did get them made up for PAX, and I think they're available over on Drive Through Cards. And basically they're the 5 lineages. Is that right? 5?
Yes.
Yep.
5 lineages, 31 families. As of now.
Yes, and 31 families I get because it's the odd number.
Also, it's Baskin Robbins. 32 flavors, but I think.
Yeah,
I
just
one
always
off.
remember.
It gets me.
If we'd only done 30, I wouldn't be able to remember it, but I remember the 31.
This
Yeah, look
really
at that.
show very well.
That's the invisible card. Yeah. But anyway, Priscilla just absolutely nailed it for us, and we were able to have those done up and ready for PAX Unplugged that year. So nice follow up, we thought.
And I got to go to PAX Unplugged that year, and I snagged a set because I wanted them. These will eventually be framed in like a little thing by my desk because I think they're cool. But for right now, they're doing this.
They're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous. So very much appreciate that Priscilla jumped in there for us, and wonderful artist. So that kind of brings us up to working on the Kickstarter, and I know we did a few back and forths on that one too, Mike. I know,
And I had a hurricane,
and in the midst of
yeah.
it, yes, yeah, huh?
but then it skipped us and destroyed everything else up the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a please don't destroy Kickstarter servers. Stay away from that. We have to have this thing run. But that was such a, I don't know, a peak of the mountain to get there and get that thing running and get the wonderful responses that we did. So, you guys, do you think we should, we have a bunch of questions that Travis has thrown up here. Should we deal with those?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Deal
cool.
with them.
Yeah, you want me to just start at the top and read through?
Sure.
Let's say, first one we got is, what would you say are the advantages of all monster types in one book versus one book focusing on each monster type?
The ecosystem. You've got to figure out how do all of these monster types function and connect and disconnect, and like who hates who and who loves somebody else, and all the things that make for a dynamic, interesting setting, because it's it's our world but cursier. It's
Yeah, I mean,
well,
if there's one thing I think anybody who comes from World of Darkness or Chronicles play knows, is that crossover is hard. When you've already made the mechanics for the game. Like, and I also, I mean, God, I've been playing World of Darkness since I was 14 years old. 99, so I started playing. And it was always one of those things too, where you had like your one friend who really wanted to play Apocalypse, and your one friend who really wanted to play Ascension, your one friend who really wanted to play Masquerade, and you all had to like someone had to settle. And then when it was Chronicles, it was the same thing. You had your friends who really loved Awakening, but Awakening didn't play nice with Forsaken for whatever, for various reasons, or it didn't work well with
or if you
Demon.
bring your Promethean in, then it ruins it for everybody
For
else.
everybody. Yeah,
The town
exactly.
collapses, the sinkhole, the whole thing.
And because we were focusing so hard on the kind of like there's the family you have and there's the family you make aspect in this book, we also really wanted to make sure that found family was part of it, and it wasn't just like here's a group of 5 vampires and they don't like
Right.
the dogs over there and they don't like the wizards over there, they don't like these people. Like, no, you're all working together for a greater good. You're all hoping to end your curses or use them to your advantage or get away from your families or take down a family head or whatever the goal of your campaign is. But like you were working together, which is why we have some of the crossover practices, where people can take practices from other lineages. I know that Danielle can speak a lot more to that because that's like all the mechanics of the practices were mostly her.
Sure, they will be talking about that in the second
Oh yeah.
panel. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But like we did really want to make it feel like it was meant to be played together from the beginning, as opposed to
But it's a coherent world.
Yeah.
It's not all. It's like I never understood why people had the problem where if we introduced a new kind of monster supernatural player character that you could be, that they couldn't get their heads around, but we never heard about them before.
right.
We need a backstory that explains why we never heard about them before. They were locked in a cabinet and then it was opened up and oh no, when it's just, it's a coherent world. So we are avoiding that problem by starting with that. And we're still going to surprise you with new things.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing, Rich. Though I didn't work on the development part. Starting from a world as opposed to 5, 6 siloed off worlds that sort of coexist, I think is probably central to that.
And I think we got as close as we could get to it with the Chronicles of Darkness with Matthew's Contagion Chronicle, to say, how do you pull this all together?
Right.
Right,
but it's a different beast when you're starting with the idea that it's all together.
Yeah.
For sure. And then there was that dovetails nicely into the next question, which was there a moment where you said, okay, we have too many ideas, and had to do the sculptor's work of carving bits off?
On the writing end, absolutely. We people put on their very best, most imaginative writers' hats and went to town on this. And the developers, one of the hardest jobs I think that our development team had was to say, you know what, as great as I love this freaking idea, it's just not going to work for this book right now. Maybe we can bring it in later. Maybe it'll never work for how this world is shaping up. But boy, that was great.
We were also in our very first drafts. We were not as specific as we sometimes are in asking people what we wanted because we wanted to see what the writers that we picked for those first drafts brought to the table.
Yep.
So we did almost like a bit of an experimental thing where we like, they got paid for their work. We all went off and said like, hey, write this. Here's a loose kind of framework. It's modern day, it's horror, but like I want you to write the myth. And so we could kind of pick and choose and see what worked and what didn't. And I think that really helped eventually cohere everything. Um, because yeah, there were a couple of the first drafts, even if they were good, they weren't what we needed for this. And then we would go and give it to a different writer and say, hey, can you play with this, but make it more this or whatever? And it eventually all, like I said, very much coalesced into a world that feels very lived in. But it's because we had a few iterations of people working together, working apart, working off each other's drafts. I, I said at the very beginning, this is probably the most collaborative thing I've ever done, and I truly meant that because like from the art to the marketing to the writing to the layout to everything has been like everyone together. I think the only thing that only one person has done on this is the edit, and that was me. I think everything else has been like 2 to 3 people at least going like, huh? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, stuff that's been trimmed, but it's stuff that should have been trimmed.
Right.
Right. And stuff that we're never going to show you unless we want to. So we're not going to say, oh, you know what?
Right.
This was changed here because that just takes you out of the experience of appreciating the world.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
Speaking of changes that people may recognize, the next question is that my impression is the level of post-crowdfunding development on Curseborne has been a lot greater and or deeper than has been traditional for Onyx Path. Is that true? And how have you found that process?
It's not true.
There
I mean,
you
it
go.
looks that way. It looks that way because of a lot of interest in very specific things that are going into it, and because it's new. But the we have gone back and we've learned actually how to better go back in and deal with post developmental sort of things, or post Kickstarter sort of things, or during Kickstarter things, how to section that off so that the commentary and the thought processes and stuff are helpful to us. And so that's been great. It's been fantastic. But if we had just sort of like stood there as we did in the earlier days and just said, hey, what do you guys think? It's not actually as helpful. You just get burned out. And part of working, this was such a long project. Everyone at one point or another working on this project has felt burned out by the project until.
And just by life, like 2020 happened 2 years into the development.
Yeah, we did make this in the middle of several apocalypse. What's the plural for apocalypse?
A ring of burning dumpsters. Let's just call it that. So, but yeah, so I think we have had this with different projects over the years. We've gotten better at both accessing and appreciating the commentary because we're more used to how to get that commentary into our mix. If that makes sense.
Sweet. Does the moth have a canonical name like Marvin or Martha? Martha, why did you say that name? Sorry, I have a Pavlovian
killed my
response
moth.
to it.
Yeah, the guy who was the moth in Lucha Underground, we can use him.
I mean, I'm all for the person in chat who said Mon Mothma. Having just watched Andor season 2.
I understand Lucasfilm might be a little bit suey, so maybe that's probably.
I can call her whatever I want as long as I don't put it in text.
We call him Arthur, just like the little moth guy and the tick.
Arthur would make sense.
Or we don't call the little moth
Carmelita.
anything because it's an instrument of the curse, and you don't want to get its attention.
I think that's the real answer, honestly.
You
like, you probably don't want to call them off things.
Yeah, especially you don't want to call its attention to you. That's the vibe. Next up, we have do you think you all will do another game line using all the splats in one book design again?
Yeah, welcome to Monster Kingdoms.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote all the splats for a book that has all the splats in one book. Uh, yeah, Monster Kingdoms. Also, Pugmire Unleashed is gonna have like
Hmm.
multiple birds, multiple reptiles, multiple badgers,
Yeah.
multiple rabbits. Uh,
Yeah, we're gluttons for punishment, really.
Well,
yeah, it's definitely a thing that we keep doing. Like even if you look at like Scion Origin, all the pantheons are in that book. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
yeah,
we
I
but
think
we build them up, and I think that people are going to get a little more used to having things happen, in these stages.
I think
Um,
people are only not used to it in this because it reminds them of stuff from a different company.
sure.
And
Well,
so they think Urban Horror, they think other stuff that we've produced, and they go, oh, but there's like one for each type. And it's like in most of our game books, we don't do that. Most of our game books have 5, 8, 10, however many splats we need
right.
to get the point across.
And that's not to say that we can't or won't expand it down the road. The world below is full of various different, dawns and dialectics, and I'm forgetting the name of the uh, philosophies.
yes, I know what you mean.
Not
Thesis and
theses. Thank you.
syntheses,
Yes,
Theses and
uh,
count
syntheses.
but that
syntheses and counter theses.
but that does not mean that since that book is done and out that we're done making up new stuff for the world below. Like that's
Yeah,
not how that works. We will be expanding things, but yeah, I think more often than not, the DNA of the books is here's a ton of stuff in the world, not just like here's one little section of the world. Good luck.
Yep.
I think it's fair to say. And then, how did you come upon the family theme?
The overall arcing family and found family theme, or like calling each of these things families, like.
I would say the overall arcing theme, but
Yeah.
because settling on family, that also is an interesting story. But yeah.
that's interesting. So there's actually a conversation in the Discord yesterday, with this being the beginning of Pride Month, about companies and using rainbow logos and whether or not, but like Onyx Path is a very queer company. Like not everybody on this panel, obviously, but there's it's a lot of queer freelancers, a lot of people from various backgrounds, and a lot of people that really do love the idea of found family, even if you're not queer. Like a lot, like there are quite a lot of folks who just had not great families and instead went and made their own, or maybe they had a nice family, but they still went and made a second one because they liked it. Um, we really liked the idea that family can be something that you're born into, and you can definitely play a character in this game that like loves their family they're
Mhm.
born into, that's totally cool with them.
Or that
That
knows how to manipulate their family and loves
yeah,
that part of it, or loathes their born family or their created family, but
exactly.
not. But when you start pulling people in to be your family, because there's things about them that you admire, there's things about them that help you, and which that's a different kind of family situation, and
Yeah.
we wanted to be very open for that because that does give you a edge. I don't really love the words zoo crew for this.
I've never even
Um,
heard the term zoo crew.
yeah,
You
the
not listen
zoo.
to morning radio?
Well, no, it's the whole idea that it's like Monster Squad, Mike.
Oh,
I thought
Okay.
you were like you like the '96 Rock Zoo Crew.
Right, I know. I really
Randy the Jackass.
I think it reduces what's something very special about this game down to like, so we can play different kinds, so it's like a smorgasbord. It's different kinds of people that work for you as your found family
yeah.
and as your larger group of people that you function with or dysfunction with, whatever is the
Yeah.
story.
Like I'm closer to some of my colleagues and most of my friends than I am some of my family. I am one of those people who have got some family I don't like. And that's fine. And I don't have to like them. And I have support elsewhere. And I know that me and Eddie had some similar experience with that. There are other people on the team who are very well adjusted about their families, and I love that for them. And so we wanted to make sure that like it was all represented in here. Like if you're born into the eight hands and you really think that the eight hands is great, that's fine. You can also love your immediate family, but not maybe the structure into which they're bound because of the
Right.
whole, curse thing. So maybe you're part of why you want to fight the leader of the Eight Hands, what I just mentioned, is because you don't love the fact that your parents, who you love very much, are
Right.
indebted to him, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many ways
So
we
many
can make that work.
stories that can come out of this, and a lot of when we do these things, stories from the heart. The whole idea of a lot of what we've done, and even the reason why we've been working with the gang at the Badana Group is because of this. So many stories I've heard over the years from various players and our community about how our games, going all the way back, changed their life, made things better for them, gave them the ability to confront their family or to understand someone in their family. Why did they treat me that way? Now I get it.
Hmm.
Because of the interplay of role playing these different roles to sort of start to be able to figure out that's why they did that. Okay. Or never realized that you were helping me all along. I've heard those stories as well. It's just amazing. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about role playing. When we do a game like this, we do a horror game like this, we could do a slasher game. We could have somebody
Hmm.
just stab me, stab me, stab me all the time. And if that's fun for the table, awesome. But we want to give you context that actually means something to you.
Well, and
It's
I,
a
Hmm.
modern world setting. It's, that's one of the advantages of doing a modern world setting is it has more impact on you as a person who's living in the modern world.
well, and I think that dovetails nicely into the last question that came through, which is, what do you think of the homebrew in terms of people making up their own mechanics and lore about Curseborne? Did that go into the design of the book?
Did the design of the book, the
I don't know
If
that we put it in the design, but I certainly recognize that I think we all realize there's spaces where people would want to fill gaps.
fantastic. Yeah,
And
I
right,
mean,
that's
we
yeah.
love that.
great. Like do that, like especially, community content eventually.
This
Uh
this is a very self-defeating
yeah.
thing for a person who makes games for a living to say, but I expect you are going to change things in the book that I write for.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to make that work for your table.
Well, we've certainly seen where even our intentions, even in even through the Kickstarter, our intentions of what something meant to be played as are completely different when someone reads through it. They go in the direction that makes sense to them.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's part of that's part of the magic of role playing. It's not a book where you're sitting there almost one on one with one creator.
we're not
It's not a movie
novelists.
where you're
Right.
not one on one at all. You're absorbing what they're presenting to you. It's not TV where you don't have any engagement with it. This
Hmm.
is where you are able to create, and your interpretation of what's going on is as valid as the person sitting over there. And I know
Yeah.
that causes a lot of fights because no, it says in the book, but that's part of the enjoyment of this hobby.
Yeah, that's how
Also,
your troop sorts it out. Yeah. It's
Mm.
I mean, when we do like specific location in Curseborne, if the places we put things don't work for you, move them.
Right.
Like that's
And
that's something we've always been big
we'll be
about.
talking about a specific location book in the next couple of Curseborne panels.
Yep, absolutely.
The second one tomorrow and the third one on Sunday.
But yeah, like I mean, that's always been a thing with a lot of this stuff. Like we present you a selection of places of NPCs, of people, of powers, of whatever, and if you want to move them around, you can. If you're playing a Lycan, but you decide that one of the sorcerer's powers really makes sense for your character, it's okay as long as your story guide's cool with it. Like, have fun. And yeah,
Right.
like we we have talked about the Fae out of the corner of our mouths off and on for the past year and a half now, and I fully expect there will be a whole bunch of homebrewed changeling adjacent characters that we have not put in a book yet. Not saying that we won't, but that we haven't. So who knows what y'all can do with that?
So many things we haven't done, but just you wait. Just you
Just you
wait.
wait.
on that bright shiny note, I think that's where we will put a pin in it for the night. We are at time.
Sounds fair.
Is there anything before we hit the road, Dixie? Any final thoughts?
I'm once again urging everybody to go give the front page of the Curseborne website a good, hard, long look.
Please
Please do.
help us. Help us. Help you.
See if
Absolutely.
there's something new there.
Please do. Mike, any final thoughts?
let's see. I hope that somebody does a Story Path Nexus setting for Curseborne in Tampa,
When that opens up,
so I can see Florida Man statted up.
somebody hook Mike up. As soon as the day it opens up on the Nexus, somebody hook Mike
I
up.
mean,
Yeah, there's a request out there, folks.
just think of it. You know, you've
Mhm.
got a cult in the Everglades, and
Yeah, you're eating crocodiles, drinking bleach, whatever.
There you
you know, Ivor.
go. How about you, Rich? Any final thoughts?
I just I can't. I mean, Dixie's talked a lot about how we just absolutely have worked hard and poured ourselves into Curseborne. I know that there's people out there who are like, is that all they talk about anymore? And it's mostly that this is a very important project for Onyx Path because it's a return to really our roots and the sort of gaming that we enjoy a lot. It's not the only gaming that we enjoy. We're not doing that whole waffles pancakes thing here, guys.
No,
But it
I
is
still love Exalted so much.
it is an area that we're so happy to be able to return to, and the response has been phenomenal. It has been so wonderful to people's conspiracy theories and what this means in this, and they changed that. Really? Well, that changes all this. Love it. Thank you so much, and keep getting the word out. And pretty soon, as you'll hear from the next the next Curseborne panels, we're gonna have a lot of stuff for y'all.
Much in the works. Thank you all so much. Thank you on screen here for being here with us for this panel. Thank
Travis,
you
once
to-
again, thank you for all that you did, whether in ignorance or not. People do not know how much work you put into all the teasing stuff that we did with those videos.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It was a big deal.
It was. I appreciate that very much. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that it had the impact that it did.
It was great collaboration. As Dixie said, that's one of the best things about this project. It just takes a lot longer to collaborate than it is to just go off and do something.
And the
Right.
occasional frantic PM. Like, hey,
Occasionally,
it's for the
yes.
website. I'm so sorry. Do you have this? Can you do this in the next 5 minutes? Do you have this file? Please help me. Like,
Precisely that happened on multiple occasions. But that's the joy. That's the joy of playing team sports. That said, folks, that is it for us for now. We will be going live again here on this channel in 30 minutes for the Scion panel. I highly recommend folks come check that out.
Scion writers and developers running amok.
Absolutely. I do want to remind you as well that since we are talking about Scion, that among the various sales that we have going on right now, if you head over to Roll20 in the link I just shared in the chat, among the links I just shared in the chat, Scion Light Extinguish, the Jumpstart, is free to play this weekend over on Roll20. It does not provide you a downloadable PDF, but you have the everything set up for you to drop right into Roll20 and play. We have various other deals and specials going on. I am going to get out of y'all's hair, but we are going to raid over to Plastic Age Plays where our actual plays are going on. And then I would ask you to come back here in a half hour and check out the Scion panel. Thank you all so much, and you all have a good, safe night.
Good night,
Bye,
folks.
everybody.